I just want to get Mr. Nxumalo, your designation, what media
and research.
And researcher at FEDUSA.
No, not researcher, research, media and research officer.
Now, the United Democratic Movement has filed a court application demanding the immediate suspension of Public Investment Corporation CEO Dan Matjila and UDM leader General Bantu Holomisa wants Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene to suspend Matjila pending an inquiry into the matter. Holomisa claims Matjila used the company doing business with the PIC to pay off a girlfriend's debt. The PIC is an investment vehicle that invests public servants' pension funds. And we're joined in studio by Honorable UDM leader Bantu Holomisa, and we have from FEDUSA media and researcher, or media liaison and researcher at FEDUSA, Frank Nxumalo. Good evening, gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining us. Now, you've submitted this affidavit in the backdrop of an investigation that was commissioned by the PIC, and you're not satisfied with the outcome thereof. Why?
The UDM is not satisfied with the outcome because the minister, when these stories came out in the media, he again instructed the chairperson of the PIC, who is his deputy, to consult the board and to resubmit what are these allegations. They must investigate. But it's the same board which had exonerated the CEO of the PIC, Mr. Matjila. So we feel that Matjila has suspended the people whom he accused of being whistleblowers or who leaked the information. Recently, you saw him spending 7 million to buy out another person who was earlier suspended, but telling the country that he has not done anything wrong. Thirdly, it is not going to be fair for Matjila, who is accused of serious allegations, to remain in the office if you want to do a proper investigation. It is for that reason that we felt that let us approach the minister to say, suspend Mr. Matjila, and then possibly ask the current Judicial Commission on State Capture, or if possible, can extend the powers of that institution to investigate these allegations. The 300,000 for a girlfriend is a drop in the ocean. I'm sure you saw where you read the letter I wrote to the president of the country, listing other serious transactions which are running into billions, including Ekenov and others.
All right, and in fairness, General, we also invited the PIC, Dan Matjila in particular, and the board to respond to questions that Afro Worldview had sent to them, and we're still awaiting a response because we would want to get the veracity of this particular allegation. If you're saying it goes beyond the 300,000 to the alleged girlfriend's debt, that essentially the rot is across the board. It is deeper than just the head of the PIC.
The rot is very, very deep. And recently, I'm sure you saw the letter I wrote to the president, wherein I said to him, there is a company here called Zongi Zizwe, which is a front company for the ruling party, ANC, sent by or working with the former TG, Treasurer General, also targeting the same fund, PIC. What's going on? How many bogus companies are there which are siphoning or channeling funds back to Luthuli House using these bogus companies? So it's too much.
So should there be a sterilization, if you will, of the database of the companies that do business with Treasury and filter it down to the Finance Ministry and all its agencies?
I would appreciate that, but you are aware that the people like Pravin Gordhan, Nene, and many others, they have been managing this fund, but wrong things have happened under their nose. The question is it true that these companies like Zongi Zizwe, which are alleged to be the front companies of the ANC, that they deliberately allowed them to influence or lobby for certain companies to get money from PIC, and that part of that portion is given to the party. Now we know, for instance, now that there's a serious allegation that some monies went to the former Treasurer General of the African National Congress. So until such time an inquiry is done so that we can be comfortable that the pension of the soldiers, the pension of the police, pension of the nurses, pension of the civil servants, even the judges, is safe.
Okay, let's talk about why the unions up until now have not been invited to the table of the PIC board. Mr. Nxumalo, in your view, and how do we deal with the cloud of controversy around the PIC?
Okay, thank you, Cinda. I think the first thing to say, since the general, has filed the papers in court, now it's for the court to test those allegations. So I think our approach is rather different because something is already in court. So it's very difficult to pronounce something that is before the court. It's for the court to test it. But our approach, Dr. Machila was absolved by the board last year on the same issue. So our belief, this is like a risk of double jeopardy. We don't see the reasoning or the logic of, rehashing the same thing.
General, your response?
Well, I'm disappointed that the unions would not believe that when other people are writing in the papers that not all is well in the institution, and they don't call for an inquiry. But thanks God, the UDM said we will pick up this battle and take it to court. In court, you are going to see minutes of the board which have been tampered with a view to protect the CEO. Those papers are public. You can go and get them.
I suppose the motive...
But at the end of the day, the reason why I went to court is because all the stories have been narrated or published in the papers and TV, and nobody is taking action. So we are testing the action to test the veracity of all these allegations. The unions should have also been saying, yes, what's going on with our monies?
So if I may come here, it's not true that, as the union we're holding back. Actually, we've been at the forefront. The public sector as such, thousands of our members work for the public sector. As workers, we've got a vested interest in that. Also, the pensions of our members are within the PIC. So for us, it's a very serious issue. We're not going to condone if there's corruption. We've been at the forefront, but what we are raising is the issue of double jeopardy, something that has already been ventilated and the man found guilty. You see even the lawyer that is representing him, I think it's Mr. Eric Mabaso. It's the same lawyer that is going to represent Den Moyana, the same lawyer that is going to present Seth Khatebe, who was found to have not been fit. He is fighting for reinstatement to the Trustnet board. And also, the same lawyer is representing members, disgruntled members.
So are you saying that there is conflict of interest?
There's obviously conflict of interest, but we're at the forefront. We're not going to condone incidents of corruption. That is not true what the general is saying.
Yeah, I think you're contradicting yourself, because essentially you were saying that this is a regurgitation of a case that was resolved within internal
but
PIC
in general,
structures.
We want the pensions of our members to be safe. We are real concerned about that. We'll never shy away from that battle.
You think the PIC is playing down at the extent of the allegations, as you're saying, that at this level of protectionism, depending on who benefits from these transactions?
As long as they suspended people who are being accused of have leaked this information and buying out people to silence them. That means there's something wrong. Secondly, some of the unions are also eyeing the same fund for their own investments. So I hope that the president, if he agrees with my proposal, that he would give wide terms of reference to look into which unions are investing with PIC or have taken money from there, and also which asset management companies have been given monies of the PIC. We know that, for instance, Investec has got a lot of money which is channeled to there. And then there are some few companies also outside Investec. Now, we want to know also what is the role of some of the ministers who were ministers of Department of Finance. In what way, what role did they play together with the deputy ministers to approve those asset management funds to be channeled to that? This investigation is broad, and the union, any union which wants to engage us, they must go and do their research and homework. I'm in court already with evidence that minutes were tampered. Let's
test what is permissible for ministers. I beg your pardon, Mr. Nxumalo, so that for the benefit of our viewers, we understand what the mechanics are of whether a union or a minister, if they have declared their business interests, may not tap into the funds of the PIC if it's legitimate and it's something that will yield the necessary return on investment, number one. Number two, if minutes, that's the strength of your evidence, General, that minutes were tampered with, how then does that prove the motive or the allegation of nefarious actions or some sinister behavior there?
The bottom line is that the money was paid to the allegedly girlfriend of the CEO, right? And the evidence is there that this CEO ordered one of the investment companies to bail out this so-called girlfriend. These are the minutes which were tampered, that to say, don't print this because it's going to compromise the PIC. The minutes are saying that. What more do you want?
No, do the minutes say in those words verbatim that the original minutes, and you have that in your evidence, in your
both
possession?
Original and tempered one.
All right, I hear you. Mr. Nxumalo.
What I wanted to say, Cindy, I wanted to raise two issues. I mean, we agree with the general as far as the fiduciary duties are concerned. In fact, we are very concerned about that to the extent that we formally raised the possibility of unions becoming board members. And it is for that reason, because our pensions, remember the PIC is a warehouse. The monies are invested, the money belongs to the GPEF, which is the Government Pension Fund. And then the PIC invests on behalf of the GEPF, which is our members' money. So our interest is not to access those funds for investing, for starting business, but for the protections of those funds. That's all, the protections of the pensions of our members. That is why we want the law to be amended so that our union members from COSATU, from FEDUSA, from NACTU can also be board members, so that we are there to protect our interests. We are not to access the monies to open business. That is not correct.
Yes. And General, I mean, there had been other cases. I think there was an oil refinery in Mozambique, if memory serves, of which was overvaluated, and investments was made that were never recouped. So how is the PIC executives, or how are they exonerated or protected, especially if it's found that the investment by its nature is a risk, that you may lose it or even make a profit in the process? Is there a loophole in that sense?
This is where the due diligence is needed to be tested and verified. Some of the monies which are doled out by PIC, you see that there has not been any due diligence. All what is happening there, the people who who chow the money of, who loot the money of the PIC, you'll find that these are these bogus consultants who are used as conduit to channel these monies out. But you will only get this information the day the terms of reference are not only confined about 300,000 money given to a girlfriend. We want to go to where the gem is. Akenov, Afri Oil, you name them. I've got a lot of lists. I've published it. Let's go there. It's a pity that the unions are not aggressive enough. But I agree, when we restructure the board, there has to be board members coming from some of the unions, right? But police, the soldiers, and nurses, they must also make sure that they've got a representative there. Because some of the transactions which will be published, there will be serious questions which will be asked around the behavior of some union representatives.
Let's go back why the PIC in the first place had the autonomy and the independence, if you will, only reporting to the Minister of Finance or Treasury. General, if you'll give us...
As long as we have a chairperson of the PIC who is a politician, we are not going to go anywhere. That's why the Treasurer General, former Treasurer General of the ANC, was camping in the offices of the PIC or having lunches in different places in Johannesburg, trying to persuade them. What for? But at the end of the day today, we have companies like Zongi Zizwes, which are accused of having been lobbying the same TG and the fund, and the money was paid.
Do you have confidence in Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene cleaning up the PIC and dealing with your allegations?
That one will not clean anything. Remember that he was the chairperson of the PIC when Machila was appointed. They have been working with him together for a long time. It is for that reason that he arrogantly dismissed our letter and didn't even have the audacity to acknowledge receipt. But we said, we'll see you in court. I'm waiting to hear whether Cyril Ramaphosa and this government and the so-called New Dawn, they would apply to defend PIC. I can't wait. The court is on the 20, is sitting on the 10th of July. This is where we will test them that this thing is rotten to the core.
And we understand it's sub judice and FEDUSA is being cautious in their response, but do you think that there is, or the minister is complicit, as the general suggests in his affidavit?
No, we've got total confidence in Minister Nene. You say the list of companies in which the PIC has invested money. That on its own does not constitute evidence of malfeasance, of corruption. The PIC invests in listed and non-listed companies. So the list itself is not evidence. What we are concerned about, like you said, I mean, when you invest money on behalf of workers, there are risks that is involved in the market. So we want to be involved at the fiduciary responsibility level so that we are part of the criteria that is used in deciding where to invest monies.
All right, your response.
The union's involvement is good, is welcomed, but it must be preceded by this inquiry so that when they go to serve in the board, they are well informed. I don't want to engage people who are not well informed. I've done a lot of research, took a risk on behalf of my party. Matter is in court. I'm not going to listen to just a garbage rhetoric from whichever corner.
Yeah, Mr. Nxumalo, while we value your opinion, but also to substantiate whether it is backed by evidence, or what informs your response that the number of companies that may or may not be implicated doesn't constitute any wrongdoing?
No, the mere fact that a PIC has invested in a PCT companies, that's what it does. I mean, as I said before, they are listed companies. There's what is called Isibaya Fund. That is the fund for non-listed companies. I mean, things can go wrong. I'm not saying there are no risk of corruption. If that's what, I'm not saying that. Yes.
All right, so
corruption can happen in those companies.
Yeah, and I mean, we've heard about corruption, state capture, and the looting of SOEs. There have been many commissions, investigations. I think on average, SOEs have probably got about 7, if not more, investigations done by so-called reputable consulting firms and auditing firms, and yet very little comes out of punitive measures, General. So what gives you the confidence that, especially if you go with the court that may not be technically well averse with the nitty-gritties and the evidence is not necessarily presented in your favor, what happens next?
Well, the approach by UDM is simply to strengthen the hand of Minister of Finance based on the allegations which are there in the public. Why the government of Cyril Ramaphosa under the so-called New Dawn would not jump and investigate and verify the authenticity or otherwise of these allegations? Why do you have to wait for a small political party to go to court and force the minister to say you cannot ask this board to reopen the investigation? They have already taken a decision, especially that the board itself was part of tampering with minutes. It's a conflict of interest. You want to keep the CEO, which the FEDUSA says we've got confidence in him, but the evidence on the paper is that he has suspended workers, accusing them of leaking the information. Instead of addressing the problem, he is only obsessed who leaked this information. Information on what? That the minutes we have in court were tampered with. Why do you chase the whistleblowers?
All right,
so he is conflicted.
Well, we'll take closing remarks very briefly from you, Mr. Nxumalo, and especially to give comfort to the public servants who's invested their hard-earned pension funds in the PIC.
Yes, I mean, we are for the protection of the jobs of our workers, I mean the public servants, the majority of them are members, and the protection of the pension funds of those members. And as far as FEDUSA is concerned, Dr. Machila is not guilty.
We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. That's UDM leader Bantu Bonke Olomisa, FEDUSA media liaison and researcher Frank Nxumalo, and you at home, thanks indeed for joining us. We take a quick break and we'll see you shortly.